Oh.
This call is now being recorded.
It is Friday, DePaul Radio Show. I'm Dale Rose. With me is Tony Scroat. Tony, what's up, bro?
What's up? You're listening to the Scroats?
Yeah, currently the Scroats. The show is the Dale and Tony Show. Or actually, you've been lobbying for the Tony and Dale Show, which I guess does sound a little bit better. For all those out there, yes, we are at DePaul Radio. Classes have let out for the summer. We are here, unlike some of the other shows that you can hear on this radio station, a.k.a. the Scum and Scumbag Show, or the Jag and Jagoff Show. They are gone for the summer, back to Iowa or Nebraska or one of those other places that they live at. Now, we are transients here I'm here from Massachusetts. Tony is here from Alaska. Is it Juneau? Tony, are you from Juneau?
Yeah.
All right, beautiful Juneau, Alaska. We're going to be here throughout the entire summer. And in fact, we're going to lobby to the dean that if you listen to our show, you will get 3 additional credits towards your graduation. Don't quote me on that. I am lobbying for that to happen right now because we do so much news. You're learning so much. Why not get credits while you're listening for it? Anyway, okay, so let's get on to some of the news of the day. First of all, Tony, happy Friday. This is Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah.
We got big weekends coming up. How you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm ready for action.
Ready for action. To start off, I'm looking at the charts here. We got a news-heavy show. We're going to talk briefly about entertainment. We'll get into more entertainment on the next show. Today is more of our news dump show. End of the month, we're going to let you know everything that happened during the month of May 1995. Of course, Memorial Day weekend. It's 5/26/1995 as of today. So we'll bring you everything starting with 5/2 all the way up to the end of the month. Things that are newsworthy, noteworthy, things that you should know. First of all, a statistic I'm a little disappointed in. Tony, as you know, the number 1 song is and has been for close to 2 months now, This Is How We Do It by Montel Jordan, which, good song, but for Christ's sakes, people go buy a different song than this. There's so much good stuff out there. Why is everyone stuck on this one song?
It's a hot track, I guess.
It is a totally hot track. As far as the albums are concerned, the number 1 album is the Friday soundtrack. We both like the movie very much, very funny. Live Throwing Copper is the number 2 record in the country. Number 3 is Hootie and the Blowfish. Live, I got to tell you, man, I can't get into these guys. I know lots of people that like the band. The singer's got this real annoying lightning crashes. He's got this real, I don't know, the way it reverbs off my brain, I just can't stand it. What do you think of Live?
So I like their first album, but this one is pretty commercial and it's too much to deal with. It's annoying, and he has a nervous sounding sound. Like the way he sings, it sounds like he's just very nervous, and I don't know, it just sounds ridiculous. I'm not feeling him.
Yeah, I agree. Nervous is a good description of it. He doesn't, I can't listen to that one song anymore. The one that starts out, Our Love Is Like Rain or something. Yeah. Our love is like water. The way he pronounces words just annoys me to no end. Anyway, Live, they suck. We won't be going to see them live when they come to town. Hootie and the Blowfish, the vocalist, I like the vocalist better. It's not my favorite, but it's better than Live. What do you think of Hootie and the Blowfish?
Oh, no, horrible. Just not feeling it at all. It's just corny and I don't enjoy it at all. And it's getting a lot of play and it gets old.
It is a hot, Hold My Hand. I've heard that probably 10,000 times. Well, one thing that is not live or Hootie and the Blowfish is White Zombie. I love this band. By the way, this is our hot album, especially from me. I love it. The hot album of the month of May. It's been in the top 10 for the entire month. Astro Creep 2000. Listened to it at a friend's house when it first came out. Thought it was friggin' incredible. Got the disc myself, and I can't stop listening to it. It's super heavy, super catchy. Now, Tony, you like the previous album a little bit more, right? Devil's Music that had Thunder Kiss 65 on it.
Love it. This one's okay. I like, the production, and I like, I like their style and everything. It just, it doesn't hit me the same way, but that's fine. Like it, he does, it's good to switch it up. And I see what he's doing. So.
Yeah. I remember, like a lot of other tunes, I've heard that on, or I shouldn't say the first place I've heard it, but reminds me of, they were on Beavis and Butthead, not for their new one, but for the previous record. I could have sworn the first place I heard it was on Beavis and Butthead.
Yeah, that's how I heard it.
Yeah, especially now that there's no more, I think they just ended it recently, like within the last couple of months. But the Headbangers Ball on MTV is where I used to go to hear some of the good new stuff. But I can't remember the last time I've watched that though. So I watched Beavis and Butthead a lot more. By the way, besides some pretty funny sketches, the music on that show, as we talked about, Tony, is pretty good as far as what they introduce you to that you don't see on MTV any other time.
Right.
So let's get on to some of the news stories here. We're going to go through some of these pretty quickly. Some we will talk more at length at. To start out with, nobody's heard about this. This is why I'm saying you should deserve credits for listening to our show. But Croatia is attempting to achieve independence from Serbia. There is war going on there. Croatia looks like they're winning. The war's wrapping up. It looks like they will achieve their independence. On 5/2, there was a slew of missiles that exploded in the heart of Zagreb, and Croatia, 6 are dead. Most of the news stories we've heard have been about Croatia winning, so we expect them to win that war pretty soon. Logan, by the way, we talked about our backgrounds. Briefly, we'll talk a little more at length about what's going on in our lives, really, probably on the next episode we have more time. But as we said, Tony grew up in, or at least came from Juneau, Alaska, also L.A., and I've come from Massachusetts. My family's from Worcester, and moved on to St. Louis, came here, Chicago a couple of years ago. Or actually more like a year ago. It feels like a couple of years. But anyway, growing up in Boston, I went to see the Red Sox a lot at Fenway Park. It's a fabulous place to see baseball. It's completely historic, reminds me of Wrigley Field. The last game has been played at the Boston Garden. The Boston Celtics have been the most successful Boston team by far. As we all know, the Red Sox, like the Cubs, are sort of the lovable losers. The Patriots are just losers. They're not really that lovable. The Bruins have won, I think, one Stanley Cup, but the Boston Celtics have won a slew. They're the number one basketball team in the history of the NBA as far as championships. The last game was played at the Boston Garden on 5-5. It was a playoff game between the Magic and the Celtics, which the Celtics lost. Anyway, they're going to tear down the Boston Garden. It means a lot to me. I know you guys, there's probably only a few transports here from Boston, from the Boston area, but it was a big deal to me. I went with my father to the game, and the one game that I went to had a really good time. Even though I was sitting behind this huge pole, basically I couldn't see anything, but still the crowd, it was a real special thing. So just some words of peace about the Boston Garden, one of my favorite places to see basketball. On to more important issues, though. Tony, this is apparently there's a horrible viral outbreak in Africa that originated back in the 1970s. They're calling it the Ebola virus.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
this is something that, if you've read the book The Hot Zone that came out in 1994, which detailed the case in the 1970s, and the movie, which was based off the book called Outbreak, which came out earlier this year. You guys have remembered that movie. I believe Dustin Hoffman was in it. This is a horrible disease where you basically bleed out from the inside and you die from blood loss. It's a horrible thing that attacks your cells, your blood cells, and does not allow your blood to coagulate. Therefore, it gets real thin and just runs out of your nose, out of your ears, out of your butt, I guess. I mean, every orifice you have.
Wow.
Blood runs out of it. I can't think, maybe besides, this is a segment I want to go into. I don't mean to turn this into actually I do mean to do it. You know, fuck it. This is our show. We do whatever we want here.
Right.
But Ebola sounds like one of the worst ways to die. And I'm thinking, Tony, can you think of a worse way to die than your body the virus attacking your body and bleeding out?
Right. Yeah, that just sounds agonizing and just horrible. Like, that's psychotic. Like, I don't know. Like that. I don't know how many words to describe it. Just you know, and it's. I believe, isn't there some kind of like U.S. government behind it kind of thing? And
well, we're behind trying to make a vaccine. Our doctors are trying to find a way. There is no cure. We're trying to find a vaccine. Certainly, right now in Zaire and Kinshasa, in Africa, they're quarantining the people there to stop the spread of the disease, which is the only way you can basically do it, to stop people from leaving a certain area and don't allow other people to enter that area so that the virus will stay centralized. Unfortunately, though, when that happens, the people that have the disease have to try to, there's a couple of people that have survived. Most people will die. And you have to let those people live out either, hopefully they make it through it, but most likely they won't, and there's really no other way to deal with it. If we had more, we have a few people that listen to our show outside of the DePaul campus, but DePaul students are our main source of our listenership, sort of. But I would almost like to take a sort of poll. What would be? Can you think of any worse way to die? I don't know. Shark attack, alligator attack, plane crash. I mean, what would be the most horrible way you could think of to die?
That's it. I mean, that's a pretty horrible way to go, and there's no peaceful way to deal with it, and no way to end the suffering.
Yeah, hopefully they will be able to stop this virus again before any spread happens, and hopefully a cure will be found. Supposedly, they're working on it right now, but we will see. A vaccine is probably coming a lot quicker than a cure, which will just allow people's bodies to fight the virus a little bit better. Very scary thing. Let's move on. We're quickly moving through these topics here. Let's go on to the Clinton. We're going to talk about Bill Clinton here. For obvious reasons, he's the president of the United States, was elected in 1992. I voted for him. I was only 18 years old. 1992 was my first election that I ever voted for. Tony, did you vote for Clinton or did you vote for G.W. Bush back in 92?
I voted for Clinton. So
yeah, or of course I don't want to leave out Ross Perot. You could have voted for Ross Perot. But we're going to let's take a few minutes here, Tony, and talk about the Clinton presidency so far. He's not the only person to credit for this, but the Dow Jones is at a record high. So there's a lot of confidence about his presidency and the way he's handled the country so far. And if you want to follow success, follow the money. He's doing pretty good so far. Let's go through a few of the policies that he's enacted nationally and talk about whether his presidency has been a success. Again, time will tell a little bit better as to how well these policies work on the country. We're going to talk about a few that look to be pretty good and one that I am diametrically opposed to. And Tony, from our discussions, you are too. First of all, as far as the good stuff, he passed the FMLA law, which is the Family Medical Leave Act. Basically prevents establishments from firing pregnant women. It allows people to leave for family emergencies while being able to secure their jobs while they're gone, if you pass the criteria that you need to attain FMLA. If you're able to qualify for it, I guess is the best way to say it. That seems to be nothing but good. Seems to be nothing but positive. The other thing is that there has been the Omnibus Budget Act that has passed. And I give them a lot of credit for this. I mean, it's, okay, we're college students, we're a little bit on the left side of things. And actually, the more I read and learn and talk to the professors, Tony, the more on the left side of politics I get. But this is an extra tax on the rich. I think it's people that are making, it's at least $250,000, maybe $500,000 a year, going up to close to a 40 percentile tax, which they're hoping will create a surplus against the deficit, which we're always seemingly fighting, and allow for more social programs to pass nationally. It sounds nothing but good to me. And another thing I was very surprised about, Tony, let's talk about this. He passed something called the Brady Bill, and this is something that there were no previous background checks for people to buy guns in this country. Can you believe that?
That's wild.
I mean, I know that you talk about. I know that the black market is a huge place where guns are. I'm not saying this is going to stop, some gang members or whoever from attaining guns, but you got to try to do what you can do. I mean, if somebody is psychotic, I mean, they could have gone out and gotten a gun without any question or without any. It seems ridiculous. I mean, it's easier to get a license to drive. It's harder to get a license to drive a car or to get health insurance than it is to buy a gun.
I was kind of blown away by that because it's like that's just a recipe for disaster. Like that's just making it so easy for people to access dangerous things. And you should have training. Like there's just even for your own safety from using a gun, you should have training. Like you can't just put a bullet in and pull the trigger. You gotta know how to use it, and it's just bad all around.
It is bad all around, and I'm just very surprised this wasn't put forth sooner. Also, there is a don't ask, don't tell. This is kind of controversial.
Mm-hmm.
Dealing with the military, of course. Tony, if you remember the movie Stripes with Bill Murray, this is, of course, the don't ask, don't tell. Now, you can't ask somebody if they're homosexual. It basically protects homosexual people from being fired. Well, what's the proper term? Being disqualified from entering the military.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you remember in the movie Stripes, the recruiter asks Bill Murray and Harold Ramis, I believe he asks them if they're homosexual, and they kind of look at each other, and it's a big joke. I think Bill Murray looks at Harold Ramis lovingly and kind of pretends that they are and says, well, we're not, but we're willing to try. Or maybe that's Harold Ramis. So now they're not able to ask those questions. So don't ask, don't tell protects gay people from those types of questions from people knowing.
Right.
I don't know. Would you feel funny? I mean, neither one of us have any inkling to join the military. Would you feel funny if you were in the military and you found out that the person that you were maybe bunking with and showering next to was homosexual? Would that bother you at all?
No, I don't care. Like, I'm like over that shit. Like, if I'm, in the military and you're about to like, go to war or you're gonna fight with each other and be in certain situations, like, I'm not gonna think about that shit because, it's just not gonna cross my path or cross my
Right.
mind because I'm not thinking about that. And I don't care anyway. It's like anybody else who's of a other ethnicity, sexual, I don't care. A woman, I don't care. Like, I'm over it.
Yeah, I would think the most important thing would be is that person qualified to watch my back and be a good, when it comes down to it, can that person perform their duties and be the best soldier possible? I think would be the number one.
Yeah, because
if it was up to me.
there's a lot of other, like, totally disqualifying people who are in the actual military, who are straight, who are supposed to be the quote unquote, like, average, soldier, and the psychopaths, like some of them are lunatics. It's just ridiculous. So if they're good at if they're good at being a soldier and they do what they do, they're cool. They're not insane. I mean, there should be like a psychological evaluation that's, effective, but.
As we've said, we haven't been in the military or certainly don't plan on it.
Right.
But I've had a lot of family that either have been in the military or are in the military.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the people they talk about being sort of in their same training group, when they go through basic training, they said there's some pretty big sickos in there.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are in there because they don't really have any other place to go. Some people really do want to shoot people.
Right.
So it seems like being gay was one of the least things I'd be worried about. So anyway, that sounds like a pretty good law that was passed by Bill Clinton. The other thing, too, is that, Tony, a lot of people say he tried to pass, him and his wife, and this is more of a Hillary thing than a Bill thing, tried to pass health care reform to make healthcare available to everybody that wants it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, this to me seems like in a country as wealthy as we are, and this can go back to extra taxes on the rich. I'm okay taxing the rich if it means that people that don't have health care can get health care.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been proven that it will pay for itself if you give people who don't normally have have access to preventative health care.
Right.
It will stop future ER visits, which are much more expensive than your regular office visit. Hopefully they'll be able to catch things before somebody gets sick enough where they go into the ER and build up this huge bill that they won't be able to pay for because we'll pay for it anyway. What do you think?
I don't get that. I don't get that. Like I have cousins in Canada and they explain their situation and they pay more taxes, but it goes into the healthcare system and it's better than here. It's not perfect, but like they don't have to deal with crazy exorbitant bills the way we do and the way they manipulate people, with the whole system of it. And yeah, it's just, it's ridiculous. And it's like, why not? Like if you have a more healthy society, then it puts back into society, like it makes sense.
Absolutely.
Like, they just don't want to deal with it now. Like they think everything is about current, and it's like you don't want to plan for the future, and in longevity. You just think about screw the citizen and screw children and screw women, screw pregnancies but before, we want to control you and tell you can have an abortion or not, but after we don't even give a shit like about kids. So it's just weird. Strange.
Yeah.
Idea.
This is something that was shot down by the Republican Congress. It's basically
Christians,
died on vine. It was dead on impact. So, maybe one day something like this will pass and we'll be able to see if it works or not. My guess is that once people are able to get this, they will not let go of it. You're talking about healthcare for everybody, and again, there are qualifying factors, whether or not how much you pay, which is based on income and all kinds of things. So, seemed like something good to me, but it did not pass. We'll see what happens in the future. So, now Tony, let's get on to something that he's passed, and it passed, I believe, last year. 1194 is when it came into effect. This has got disaster written all over it. We're talking about the North American Free Trade Agreement, otherwise known as NAFTA, which, started out in 1988. This was passed between the U.S. and Canada to severely reduce tariffs so that there's free trade between the two countries. Now they've included Mexico. Now the difference is that the average Mexican worker makes a severe fraction of what the American or Canadian worker makes, which is the difference. There's not much of a difference between labor costs up in Canada as opposed to America. There's a huge difference about how much, say, General Motors, and I mentioned the auto industry, because they are moving out of Detroit and moving into Mexico and then allowing the shipment of the parts and the products back into America with little to no tariffs. How can you possibly, Tony, explain this to me. How can we not abide by the laws that we have in America when you're talking about labor laws, child labor laws, the conditions of the factories, the conditions that the employees have to work in? How can you compete with America? How can you compete if you are trading with a country that doesn't have these same protections in place for the American worker? It just seems like a nightmare, and they're certainly not going to pay these Mexican workers what they're going to pay American workers. How is this going to work? Right.
It's a negative all the way. It's a zero equation. Because you're fucking them. Oh man, you're screwing over American workers.
It's okay, we can swear.
But you're screwing over Mexican workers as well. And it's like they have really crappy working conditions, and it's like passing the buck, but you don't really need to. And I don't know. It's like it's one of those things you just have to scratch your head and go, why? You did pretty good. Did some pretty good policies, and then all of a sudden this shit show shows up, and it's like, I don't know. I mean, I guess wealthy people in the government benefits from this. I don't know.
Well, what they say is that there will be savings in the products that come over. They will charge less money, technically. So they're saying the American consumer benefits by paying less. We know that like Walmart is one of the fastest growing companies in America for retail. They are currently starting to buy a lot of their clothing products and different things from Mexico. That's where they're putting a lot of their factories in. So they're saying, hey, we're going to sell a shirt for $5 instead of $10, so you'll pay half the amount. The difference is that same factory in whatever town it was that made shirts in America, all those jobs are going to be lost and sent to Mexico for that severe. We're talking about the discounted amount that Mexican workers will work for. But also, too, what happens is, say, in General Motors, the people that benefit the most are the majority stockholders, because the stock will shoot up if sales increase because of the lower cost. So in essence, you're trading. And how is the common American citizen going to really benefit from that when they own a severe minority of stock in these businesses and rich people own the majority of the stocks? Obviously, it's just done to help the rich, which one thing we do know of the Clintons is that his wife has been on the board of Walmart for years now. So that will certainly up the Walmart stock. They are going to, my guess is they're going to shoot up in the American retail environment and be far and away the number one retailer. That's going to make certainly them a lot of money. Who knows what other type of stock investments the Clintons have, and I'm just using them as an example. I'm sure the Bush family does, and all the rich American institutions / families will benefit from this. But this is not something that's going to benefit the American worker or even the common American consumer, and they think they're paying, they're benefiting because they're paying less for these products. But meanwhile, when it finally hits their town, or whenever factory they work at goes out of business and moves to Mexico, then all of a sudden they'll feel the pinch, and they'll be saying, "Gee, maybe this isn't so good after all." Unfortunately, Americans don't have the foresight a lot of times to see the end game of these type of things, rather than what is the immediate gratification they get from it.
Right.
All right. So the last thing you're talking about with Clinton. So obviously there's some positives with some of these bills that he's put forth, and obviously a negative one, something we think is going to be negative, NAFTA, which is we've already seen some negative results from this. One last thing I have to say is that, look, I think Ross Perot is out of his mind. A little bit. He's kind of a crazy, I think he's in oil or whatever he's in, but yeah, but he actually was a big opponent to NAFTA, and that's the first thing he said is you're going to see American jobs disappear like crazy if you open up this NAFTA free trade agreement with Mexico. And so far, it looks like he's 100% correct. The last thing, Tony, I don't know if we are jealous. I don't know if we're outraged by this, but Bill Clinton gets lucky quite often. He is married, so if you have something against, if you find marriage sacred, then I can't understand how you'd like Bill Clinton individually, but he's had a lot of affairs, as it turns out. Going back to, we don't even talk about I don't know about the White House, but I know if we're talking about Arkansas, the joke is there's a lot of little Bill Clintons running around in Arkansas. From all the affairs that he's had. The newest one was Paula Jones, who is a secretary, I believe, in Arkansas, but apparently there was some type of a gathering at a big hotel in Colorado called the Excelsior Hotel, which she attended, and she claims that he sexually harassed her. So I believe she's going to sue him civilly. I believe that's the big case now. Do you believe her? Nothing's been proven. He says it's not true. Do you believe her that he sexually harassed her? Do you think she's making it up to try to get some money?
I don't know enough, but I don't know. I could see Clinton being one of those politicians, but technically I don't know enough of the details. I don't know.
I hear you. I guess I would immediately, obviously she's got something to gain from this, but I don't know. He's got a checkered history when it comes to women. Whether or not there was actual harassment or not, I don't know. Whether or not they actually had sex, I don't know. We don't know these things. But, again, we know that he has a questionable history when it comes to affairs and women, and obviously cover-ups. When he was running, I believe it was when he was running for president. By the way, they're working on a movie on him right now. They've just started production, and I guess John Travolta's going to play Clinton. Nice. But what they are professing in this movie is that he got an underage girl pregnant, and someone who was going to out him, I don't even think it was the girl. So I think there was a settlement out of whatever, you might have paid her off, but supposedly one of the people that is in his camp was going to out him for this, was sickened by it, and they were found dead by a lake.
There's a theory,
Yeah, so did they have that person killed? I don't know. It seems very suspicious.
Right.
Lots of suspicion around Clinton outside of his presidency. The funny thing is that I mean, I'm not, besides the death part, but boy, Kennedy is a guy, if we don't like presidents because of their extramarital affairs, the king of that was Kennedy. I mean, he had affairs with
the
every
brother.
single, oh my God. Well, even
Robert.
JFK, the actual president, had tons of extramarital affairs. Everyone around him, it seems like he hit on and tried to have an affair with.
Yeah.
So, wasn't it weird, too, that him and RFK both had an affair, talking about Robert Kennedy, with Marilyn Monroe?
Mm.
Okay. On to the rest of the stories here. We got a couple other news stories, and we'll break off into our jobs, what we're going to do for the weekend, what's going on this weekend in Chicago for Memorial Day weekend. Sean, how much do you know about, it's my nickname for you, by the way. What do you know about the Dalai Lama?
He's the, I call it, like the high priest or the leader of the Buddhist community.
Bingo.
Buddhist religion.
Well done. He is the spiritual leader, the living Buddhist god, the spiritual leader located in Tibet. A lot of people lay claim to the Dalai Lama besides Tibet.
Mm-hmm.
Is him as their spiritual leader. I guess China does. Anyway, the news from the Dalai Lama is that he has named a successor, an 11th reincarnation of the Panchen Lama, which is the second in command to the Dalai Lama. This kid's name is only 6 years old. His name is Gedun Shoiki Naima, and he is proclaimed as the Panchen Lama by the Dalai Lama. This is a weird thing. I guess the Chinese government has somebody else that they think is the next coming of the Dalai Lama, the next reincarnation. So they are at odds with Tibet about this. They kidnapped this kid. I'm talking about back on 5/14. He was kidnapped. He has not been seen since. Likely he has been ritualistically sacrificed, I believe, or he's been. They did something nefarious with this kid, and now everyone is looking for him. But he's been kidnapped by the Chinese government. What a weird thing, huh? When you talk about
that's wild.
Especially when you're incorporating something like, it'd be like in this country if we're naming who's the reincarnated Jesus Christ, basically. And then maybe other countries don't agree, and it's just a weird thing to dub a child as the next god of your people. So anyway, we'll see if the kid. We'll see if the kid turns up, but not reserving too much hope that they're going to find that kid. Another horrible story. This is something that Tony, you and I talked about. Tony, otherwise known as Shanana. This guy's name is Shoko Asahara in Tokyo. He's a cult leader of the Doomsday Cult. And him and his backers executed this nerve gas attack in the subways of Tokyo. 5 different trains were hit by this chemical called sarin, which was a time capsule release, I believe, that released this nerve gas into the subway sometime after his backers would drop this capsule into one of the cars on the subway. And 5 trains were hit, 13 people dead, over 1,000 hospitalized, in fact. Supposedly it was pandemonium where people were rushing out of the subway. Besides the 13 that are dead, we're talking about thousands of people that were affected, just running to the hospital, the nearest hospital, over flooding this hospital with emergency cases of people becoming sick. And this is one of the worst cases of biological warfare, otherwise known as germ warfare or bioterrorism, that we have seen. And we hope that this is not something we're going to see more in the future. As far as we know, Tony, this is something that is considered a war crime if it is perpetrated by actual countries, by military or leaders of countries. So this is
Right.
something that is bad news. Have you heard anything about this case?
Yeah, I saw something about it, and I thought it was insane. And it's wild because it's a really tight society. So, with guns, and so it's amazing they got the equipment and the the ingredients to do, or the weapons to do this, the chemicals and all that. So
Right. Yeah, I think this guy was a doctor. I think this guy was a doctor and had access to some of this nerve gas. But we look back at, you and I have studied the Nazi regime a little bit, and some of the tactics that they used, some of the incredibly horrible science that they were coming up with to try to use against the world, basically, in the 30s and 40s. What is the craziest thing you'd heard about the Nazi regime as far as the science or creation that they were trying to throw at the world to kill mass amounts of people? Have you heard about some of the crazy stuff they were doing?
Yeah, I mean, gas, crystal meth, you had the angel of death, you had, one of the weirdest things was, I guess if you're talking about doing, they were actually trying to create a super soldier with gills, and, they were sewing bodies up with gills to make them able to breathe underwater and all. It's just insane. They were close to, they were close to a nuke, like they were in sight of almost accomplishing that, and so that would have been just crazy. There would have been no world after that, but, they starved, they used all kinds of methods.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they had I'm not sure if they had gotten into, I think bioterrorism is more of a new thing. I didn't know how far back it went, as far as, I didn't know if the Nazi regime had tried something similar to this.
I thought it was like germ warfare.
What's that?
Or like germ warfare.
But it's the same thing. That's bioterrorism, releasing germs or viruses on a population to hope that it obviously spreads and kills lots of people. As far as I know, at least since it's become illegal to use germ warfare, that's it's like it's a military crime to do that.
Right.
Just like it's a crime to hit mass waves of citizens in an area, as opposed to military bases and or political bases when you're attacking the country. But anyway, that it looks like that was taken care of. Hopefully we won't see another case like that. We've got a couple of again, the news doesn't seem to be the news unless it's quote unquote the bad news, but a couple of deaths here before we go into our weekend events. The next show, guys, again, will be a lot more fun as we talk about early summertime here in Chicago. But a couple of deaths. Number one, Elizabeth Montgomery died on May 18th.
Oh, wow.
She, of course, was a star of Bewitched. Not sure if I've seen her in a few other things that I'm going to talk about, Tony. I don't know if you've seen her in anything besides Bewitched, but I had a thing for her, kind of a crush on her. Not sure if you did too, but first of all, she was in one of my favorite Twilight Zone episodes. Everyone seems to have a favorite Twilight Zone episode, and this one is in my top 5, but it's Elizabeth Montgomery back in her and Charles Bronson. We're talking about,
oh, wow.
This is sort of a post-D-Day nuclear attack that happened in there. Again, it's fictional, as if the Nazis did eventually get a nuclear bomb.
Oh, wow.
And they attacked America with it, and Charles Bronson emerges as the only man left standing uh, sort of a little bit like I Am Legend, the great book.
Hmm.
Although this I think came out a little before that. Which ironically, the guy that wrote I Am Legend, Richard Matheson, got his start in the Twilight Zone. But as it turns out, Elizabeth Montgomery was living as well. We're talking about both these. I couldn't even recognize them. They're both like 22 years old. Elizabeth
Hmm.
Montgomery is just absolutely hotter than hell. And then,
Hmm.
and two, basically, I think she's, I'm trying to think about the episode. I know that she's very weary of him and she thinks he might rape her or attack her in some way because he is a soldier and she's a citizen.
Hmm.
So anyway, it was a great episode, and they eventually or whatever in this world become the only two. They pair up and become partners in this world. But it's a great episode. But
Hmm.
do you have like a favorite Twilight Zone episode that you've seen? Like your
Um.
favorite?
Oh man, the one with Burgess Meredith, where he's like the only person on Earth, and he just has books, and he's obsessed with his books, and it's like, or no, that's where I think actually that's where he has a time. He's able to stop time with his stopwatch, um, and then he's obsessed with it, and then he drops it, and it breaks, and it stops time permanently, and
Wow.
um, what's the other one? The dolls, or the mannequins that come to life. I think that's it.
Yeah. I
But
think there's a couple of those. Those are always scary.
like he just Rod Sterling were he was like so much ahead of his time. Like he was thinking, he was just deeper. He studied society, and all his episodes they're fascinating if you break them down and what went into them.
Another interesting side note, Rod Serling, creator of Twilight Zone and writer of many of the episodes,
Hmm.
also wrote, I don't know if he directed it, but I know that he wrote Planet of the Apes.
Oh wow!
The first movie, and I think there was a few more, Rise of the Planet of the Apes or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
So he is the head of that movie series. Very prolific writer and entertainer in Hollywood.
Hmm.
The last thing I'll say about Elizabeth Montgomery is that she was. Oh, by the way, excuse me. Before we get off Twilight Zone, I mentioned Richard Matheson, the writer of I Am Legend. He wrote
Yeah.
probably my favorite episode of the Twilight Zone. It's called Nightmare at 20,000 Feet.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
William Shatner plays a basically crazy guy that's seeing an alien on the wing of the
Right.
plane. And of course,
Oh,
Tony,
it's a
you saw that.
gremlin. Yeah.
The Gremlin, of course, we saw I know that you've seen the movie, the Twilight Zone movie that came
Right.
out in the 1980s. That was one of the redos that they did
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
with John
It's
Lithgow.
great.
Yeah,
I
and
like both.
yeah, I wasn't a big fan of the movie, but that was my favorite redo of the original stories. And of course, the alien looks a little more realistic. Everything's a
Hmm.
little more realistic. And it's really kind of funny if you see the special effects of the original. Uh, it's so old school, and there's like a guy in a plastic suit and walking on a board that they just colored to try to make like the wing of a plane. It's kind of laughable.
Right.
So anyway, great show. But Elizabeth Montgomery was in one of my favorite TV movies of all time. My favorite probably being Salem's Lot, but I want to say my
Oh.
second favorite one that I've ever seen was I think of the exact title. It was Lizzie Borden.
Oh yeah.
The story of Lizzie Borden or whatever, but she played Lizzie Borden. And
Nice.
if you remember the tale, I come from Massachusetts, of course, famous there, Fall River, Massachusetts, which is a beautiful little town.
Yeah.
But the history of the town, much like Salem, and there's so many small towns that have this incredibly either dark or foreboding or mysterious histories to them. in Fall River, Massachusetts. I believe it was 1892, which is a little more than 100 years ago, is when the case of Lizzie Borden happened, where she supposedly killed her parents. And we know the nursery rhymes of Lizzie Borden took an axe, gave her mother 40 whacks. When she realized what she had done, she gave her father 41. Now, technically,
wow.
I think she gave, maybe it was like 15 or 17 hits. But whoever did it really did a number on the parents. Anyway, in this movie, spoiler alert, okay, for those, but it was the ending was crazy, and they think that the idea that was proposed was that she stripped off her clothes and murdered her parents in the nude. That's why she didn't have any blood spatter on her when the cops came. So another theory is that she burned her clothes, which she technically did. She was caught burning her clothes in the backyard the next day, and she claimed that she had her period and stained her dress. But supposedly the dress was covered in blood, not just a little bit of red. Anyway, very good performance by Elizabeth Montgomery. Very different from her in Bewitched, of course, which is this little sweet mainstream show, and for her to play Lizzie Borden.
She was
You
good.
like Bewitched?
I did. In fact, my favorite character was actually when she played her sister. I thought she was hot. So.
It's been so long since I've seen that show, even in reruns. She had a sister character that she played and was a little different. The sister was different.
She was like a darker version. She was like, obviously, because she had black hair, it was short. She had like a beauty mark, like she was sassy, like she was hip and like, fast and all that. And, her sister, of course, is mellow, married, no fun. So she's like a 60s go-go girl kind of character.
Right. Right. And so anyway, unfortunately, Elizabeth Montgomery dies at 62 years old of colon cancer. If you're feeling a little funny down there, go get that checked out by a doctor. Apparently she did, but did not go to a doctor. Next thing you know, she's got colon cancer, and they were not able to excise the cancer from her body, and she has passed away at 62. R.I.P. to Elizabeth Montgomery. Another public figure, if you love Bugs Bunny or Looney Tunes, which I grew up on. Bugs Bunny, Tony. Friz Freleng has died. Just happened today, in fact. The animator, cartoonist, director, producer, and composer of the Bugs Bunny show, otherwise known as Looney Tunes, Friz Freleng. So, just as a thank you to Friz and his career, do you have any favorite Bugs Bunny episodes or skits that you want to share?
I always thought it was interesting that he played a cross-dressing character in general, but one of the funniest ones is the Halloween one where he goes into a castle and there's a witch.
I love that. That is the best.
There's so many. When he does a road, comedy with Daffy Duck. That's always funny. I don't know. It's just one of those things I grew up on, and in general, I just think it's great. So.
Yeah. Speaking of Daffy Duck, which of course I actually liked Daffy Duck more than Bugs. Daffy played. It was a take on Buck Rogers. It was called Duck Dodgers.
Yeah.
In the 24th and a half century. And it was friggin' hilarious when he would he would unsuccessfully take off and fly, and he would crash right into a building immediately and get flattened against the side of the building.
Right.
It was great character, great episodes with Daffy Duck. My favorite, I believe, is Sylvester the Cat. Is probably my favorite character. Sylvester, his son, and his wife. That Sylvester couldn't catch a mouse and feed the family, and he was shamed as a father. Probably my favorite is Sylvester with Tweety Bird, and I believe the character's name is Dutch, the big pit bull. and it's Sylvester going
Yeah.
after the
Oh,
T-Bird,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
then Dutch going after Sylvester, and just some
Mhm.
hilarity ensues. So, but I got to tell you though, when I was a kid, we're talking about if I was born in '74, we're talking about like '82, '83. Right
Mhm.
around 10 years old, 84, that time period, Bugs Bunny was still sort of the center of cartoons on Saturdays.
Oh, of course.
Um,
Yeah.
and my favorite being the Super Friends. I mean, that was my absolute favorite, talking about Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman,
Yeah.
Aquaman, Green Lantern, all that stuff. That was my favorite. That was on, I think, at like 9 o'clock. But then Bugs Bunny came on at 11 for a whole
Mhm.
hour, which was very rare
Right.
because most cartoons were half an hour. But is there another cartoon you can think of, maybe with Bugs Bunny or the Super Friends, that you think was the centerpiece of your Saturday mornings?
Saturday mornings, the entire lineup. I mean, I got up super early, 6 a.m., and then
Me too.
I started. I watched. That's how I got introduced to. Well, I watched Batman and Superman TV, but that's how I got more introduced to like Wonder Woman and the Green Lantern. There's no shit about them, and so I learned through Super Friends. I liked all the Hanna-Barbera shows, and I liked all the crossover shows like The Thing with some kids or the Harlem Globetrotters. There was like a Flintstones special show with like Shmoo, Captain Caveman, the Littles. You had like, there was like 5 hours of cartoons. And I think the last group would, if you watch ABC, because all the networks had them, ABC had this show called The Littles, that I watched. And NBC, there was the Snorks, which are like pretty much the Smurfs.
Snork. Yeah, I remember that stuff. There was Scooby-Doo meets like, Batman or the Harlem Globetrotters or Don
Like
Knotts or
random.
Dracula.
Random.
Random. Then, of course, they morphed into Scooby and Scrappy, which Scrappy, of course, one of the most hated cartoon characters in the history of cartoons. But you mentioned Hanna-Barbera. Hanna-Barbera's World of Super Adventure was absolutely bitchin'. There was like a Sinbad character or a Viking character that was the coolest.
Thundar the Barbarian.
Who was it?
Thundar the Barbarian.
Oh, that was great. Yeah. That's great stuff. That really takes me back. So, yeah, for Frizz Freeling and Bugs Bunny, which, by the way, I even recently, like in the last decade, they've been making movies. I think one of them was Daffy Duck's Fantastic Island. I still watch all that stuff and love it. I can't help it. That is a tremendous, what a tremendous series of cartoons through the years. Of course, we can take away the 1930s and 40s versions of the cartoons where it's actually kind of pro-Nazi. So let's forget about those.
Well, it's weird. It's like there's like there's like allied cartoons,
right,
where they make fun of Nazis and they make them like these dark figures, and then there's like the ones where they make fun of the Japanese, which is like, I know they were the enemy, but it's like it's like super blatantly racist and like the whole thing, and then getting like what really kills me is like getting the stereotype even wrong, where it's like, okay, you're making fun of Japanese people and you make them look Chinese. It's like, at least if you're gonna be a bigot, get it right. But anyway, it's ridiculous. The 40s, like all that older shit it's crazy if you break it down.
right. I think now that you mention it, I think Disney was a little bit bigger of a offender as far as the pro-Nazi stuff.
Woo! Walt Disney he was very anti-Semitic. Like him and Henry Ford were in competition of who was the bigger anti-Semite, and I mean, it was the tone. They were all in that weird. They were all in like weird groups, like them. It was like those two, and who was it? Howard Hughes, I believe.
Oh yeah, the Aviator.
Yeah, like, these rich white guys, and, it's just this, vehement, like, Nazism it wasn't hated, actually. It was being talked about, like, interestingly, in circles, and,
Yeah, well, we talked about the science earlier. Some people thought they were onto scientific breakthroughs, and some scientists wanted to go work with them.
Right. Well, they brought him over. They brought the scientists over. That's why we had,
right.
The atomic bomb and shit. And
right.
Anyway.
So, what a sordid cartoon history America has. For Frizz Freeling, thank you for the memories. Love Bugs Bunny. Real quickly, we're going to delve into movies a lot more on this next radio show that we do. But as far as the last couple of weeks, some big movies came out. We know that the Batman movie came out, which sucks, the Val Kilmer one. Neither one of us liked that really.
Yeah, that movie's hated, and all my nerd friends, like, I go to this comic book shop on Clark and Belmont. It's like up Clark, and Chicago Comics. Great place. Very pissed off nerds that whole thing was just, it was like what's his name? Tim Burton didn't give a shit and just said whatever, and it looks like a big colorful blah.
No, I mean, Tim Burton did not direct this version. The guy that directed this one was the guy that directed The Lost Boys.
Oh, are you serious? Oh, wow.
Yeah, so Tim Burton turned it down. Michael Keaton turned it down too. They tried to bring him back. That's why they ended up getting Val Kilmer. So just a big, a colossal movement of the Batman franchise. A lot of people wanted it to, if they were going to continue it, to stay the way it was and have the same people work on it previously, but apparently it didn't work. Which, by the way, do you know that the second Batman, talking about the first two Batman movies, they wanted, Kim Basinger is the one that played Vicky Vale, which is Batman's girl, Bruce Wayne's girlfriend.
Bruce Wayne's girlfriend, yeah.
Now, they originally wanted to cast Michelle Pfeiffer in that role, and Tim Burton was hell-bent on making sure that she was to play that role. Now, I read that Michael Keaton actually dated Michelle Pfeiffer a few years before that movie. It was vehement. He basically said, look, I'm not going to work whether it's going to be too weird or something. Right. His current girl, whoever, I think he's going out with Courtney Cox, or he was going out with Courtney Cox. Anyway, she didn't want them working together, so he basically lobbied for Tim Burton not to include her, and he says, fine, she's not going to play that character. But then in the next movie, he's like, she's playing Catwoman whether you like it or not. So you're gonna have to deal with it. She's perfect for this role. She was great. I don't know what you think. Tony, but I thought she was great.
Yeah, she was amazing. Like, she's pretty, of course, but like to be that seductive and a badass, it's like she kind of carries that same vein of like Eartha Kitt and the other two original, Batwomen from the '60s. So, yeah, she's good, man. But that's funny when you learn behind the scenes. It probably was like, I have to fucking do this shit.
Yeah, she had the voice. She's a good actress, besides being, like you said, quite beautiful. So, so that was the Batman movie. Now, you've seen, we're talking about the number one and the number two movie at the box office. I've seen one of them, but not the second one. Of course, Die Hard 3 is the big movie. Bruce Willis is back again. I don't know why the biggest things in the world that happen are always where he's at, but or they always have to bring him in. At this point, if I was him, I'd be like, look, you want me to save the world, give me $10 billion, but whatever. Die Hard 3, and then Crimson Tide, of course, which has Denzel Washington, who's quietly putting together quite an impressive resume of movies. Mm-hmm. Also starred in, Malcolm X and some other Spike Lee films. And, God, who's the guy that's co-starring? I always forget this guy's name. It's the guy from the French. Gene Hackman, there you go. He's the guy from the French Connection. Anyway.
Come on, man.
Hey, there's a lot of news to report, man. So
Yeah.
Crimson Tide, I haven't seen this. I think you've seen it. I've seen Die Hard 3, did not like it. What do you think of these two movies?
Liked it. That's pretty
Liked
much
them
it.
both.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think, was it Samuel L. Jackson, co-starring
Yeah.
Die Hard 3? They're going to keep making those, by the way, until they stop making money. They're making tons of money off this Crimson Tide, I believe, about the submarine, some kind of submarine. So, anyway, go out and see those if you want to. Next time we'll have some more movie news about some of the hot releases and maybe things that are still going to come out in the future of this summer of '95. So we got some local stuff going on here. Of course, as you guys know, we've mentioned this briefly before. I work at Tequila Roadhouse, North and Wells, across the street from Second City, which is the hottest, coolest bar I feel in the city. Open till 4 o'clock on weeknights. Come by if you want to talk to me, although you're going to have to buy a couple of drinks if you want to stay. And Tony, you have the coolest damn job that I know of. You work at the Vic.
Yeah.
By the way, thanks for getting me into that Braveheart opening a couple of weeks ago.
Nice.
Tony has only a couple passes he can give out to this. Allowed me to come in, and there was like some Chicago celebrities there. This was like the grand opening of Braveheart before it was released nationally. So thank you, by the way, with that. How's the job going?
I like my job. It's fun. I'm pretty spoiled. Like, if you're into rock music and live music, it's a great place. A lot of acts come through. It's great. I love it. Can't complain.
Yeah, and I'm crazy about your brew and view nights you have there, where you can watch the old movies, or they'll have like whatever Jaws 1, 2, and 3, or they'll have Quentin Tarantino nights. You sit there and have some nice cold brew and watch some movies. Gets a little rowdy in there. Speaking of which, we're gonna end the show, guys, with a big announcement. Of course, we talked about White Zombie earlier in the show, and Tony, I got special passes for you. Nice. You and I are gonna go see as long as you're free. I hope you're free, but whatever plans you got, cancel them, because I got tickets tonight for you and I to go to the Aragon Ballroom to see White Zombie, the Melvins, and Reverend Horton Heat. So, what do you say? You want to go?
Yes, we're going.
Let's do it. The Melvins are one of my absolute favorite grunge bands. Don't know too much about Reverend Horton Heat. I know they do a really cool cover version of the theme song for one of my favorite cartoons of all time, which is Johnny Quest. I didn't realize how cool that theme song even was until I heard these guys do it. It is magnificent. So we're going to go see that tonight. And I got to work on Saturday nights, and then I got Sunday and Monday off. Anything else going on this weekend with you, Tony, to report upon?
Let me think. Not really. Just gonna, like I said, I'm gonna be working and then hanging out. I'm gonna try to probably talk to some people and see what's going on. But other than that, it's pretty mellow.
Yeah. Now you're getting kind of tight, unlike me. I mean, I don't have a girlfriend, but you're getting pretty tight with the girl you work with. I don't know if we should mention. I keep people's real names off the air here in case they don't want to talk about it. But so you guys are getting kind of tight. You've been going out for a while. You live together. Are you guys gonna maybe be tying the knot anytime soon?
Not right now, but yeah, she's great. We get along. I really like her, and yeah, like I'm willing to see what happens.
Well, we'll see what happens. To be continued. We'll talk more about this stuff on our next broadcast. And on behalf of Tony and Scroat, this is Dale Rhodes, DePaul Radio. Happy Friday, guys. Happy Memorial Day weekend. We'll talk to you soon. Keep it up. Keep it hard. Keep it rocking. And we'll talk to you next time.
Rock and roll.
Rock and roll.